Welcome back to the Preppy Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. As always, I have another great interview for you today. Today, I'm speaking with the founder of Ivy Coast Collection. And I don't know about you guys, but as I get older, I am so much more careful in the sun and aware of it. I've learned so much about how bad the sun can be for your skin and for your wellness. So when I discovered Ivy Coast Collection, I just loved how their pieces are very classic. They're very preppy, but they also protect you from the sun. We dive into how the brand came to be with the founder's background in fashion and then a scare with skin cancer. So I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. But before we get into that, there's a lot of fun, exciting announcements for the podcast. There's so much going on. So the first being that next week, just about a week from today, May 27th, I will be in Dallas, Texas at the Lili Sadugi store there in Highland Park Village. And I would love if any of my listeners came and visited me and Lili herself, the Queen of Accessories. We are going to be there for a fun shopping event to help you get ready for a summer of preppy and the whole preppy anti-movement that I've been talking about on social media and this podcast. So come shop with me and Lili. That's on May 27th. Feel free to bring a friend. I can't wait to meet so many of you and just share this summer of preppy. Then also put on your calendar, June 5th, I will be in Newport, Rhode Island. I am doing a fun live podcast panel. I've done a few of them before. This one will have Tyler Bowe, CK Bradley, Loren Hope, and so many more. And that's in Hammett's Hotel in Newport. So I will be sharing more information on this on social media, but here's your guys' first sneak peek about this event. Save the date. That'll be 10:30 a.m. on June 5th in Newport, Rhode Island. Then finally, a reminder that July 14th and 15th, there's the first ever Preppy Podcast retreat. So I'm describing this as Adult Preppy Summer Camp. It is going to be in the Berkshires at the Red Lion Inn, and we are going to be doing preppy activities like needlepoint, mahjong, watercolors. You guys, the gift bag is insane. I've been collecting items for it. We're also going to be doing a photo shoot with a magazine for one of the dinners. So you guys need to buy your ticket. There's a very limited amount. This is the first retreat that I'm doing. So I wanted to keep the numbers very, very small. So go grab your ticket. It's a great time to just connect with other listeners, other people who love preppy style, and it's open to everyone. So whether you're an influencer, you own a preppy brand, or maybe you are just, a stay-at-home mom or you work a corporate job, it's open to all of you. Just, I would say, as long as you come with a great attitude, you want to meet some new friends essentially and do some preppy activities. It's not necessarily a business retreat where we're diving into business topics. It's more like making new friends, pretending like you're an adult going to summer camp and taking part in preppy activities. So all the information on that is on the preppypodcast.com, where you can find past episodes and shop a lot of the brands that I've interviewed here. So I know that was a long intro, but there's just so many fun and exciting things. So without further ado, let's get into this week's episode. All right, so why don't you let everyone know who you are, where you live, and what you do?
Sure. My name is Nikki Amabile, and I am the founder of Ivy Coast. I live in New York City with my two children, my husband, and a cat and a dog.
Excellent. Well, I was thrilled that I got to meet you at the New England Coastal Creative Conference. I love Kim and all of her events. And I was drawn to your beautiful pieces and the great prints that they're in. So I'm excited to learn more about you and how your brand got started today.
Sure, thanks. I've always had a fashion background. I came from a footwear background, and
Okay.
I've always been very into fashion and styling and all of that. I took a pause break in my career to kind of raise my children during their most formative years. And a diagnosis of melanoma was like a huge wake up call to me. Um, I felt like there was nothing out there that kind of catered to my lifestyle and how I like to look. It was all very athletic and swim, and the prints were terrible.
Mhm.
And I remember my mother in law giving me this shirt because she was like, "You have to cover up, you have to be careful." And I was like, "I can't wear that." And so I started diving deep and doing research, and there just wasn't anything cute out there. And I was like, this is my call. Like, it's time to create it, And I wanted to figure out how I can do it in a way that's not using those polyesters and those nylons that you typically find out there. How
Yeah.
can I make it different and not use chemicals? So I spent like 9 months trying to figure out how I'm going to create this collection and just sampling and testing and doing all the back end of that. And my first sample came out and it was exactly how I wanted and it passed all the tests. And I was like, okay, it's time to start this business. Let's get it going.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I love how you took something, obviously a negative that was happening and turned it into a positive and almost saw a calling from it. Um, but before we get into that, tell me a little bit about your background. What did you end up studying in college and kind of what was your career leading up to this? Because I feel like sometimes people's backgrounds help them a lot with what they're doing today. And other times it's like, no, I was, a nurse and now I'm designing hats. So I'm curious.
Sure. This is going back a little farther. I specifically remember, the college fair in high school and all the universities coming, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. All my friends, I felt like everybody had a path and had a vision, and I was kind of scrambling a little bit. And then one day I stumbled upon LIM College's website, and I was like, wow, it's a fashion school and it's for business. I was like, this is different, right? Because I'm creative, but I don't necessarily have the creative piece to sketch something that's like detail oriented and all of that. I have a creative mind and how to develop something. So I went on their website and I begged my parents because I was on the fast track to community college at that point and I needed to get out of Long Island. And there was a summer program. So whereas all my friends were out like saying their goodbyes and having fun, I was joining this summer program and I was commuting to the city every day. And I was going on, they call them field trips, and I'm meeting all of these wonderful people in the industry and learning more about what is the fashion industry. And at that time, like people didn't understand there's a whole business side of the industry outside of just creating something like physically. So I would come home every day and I was so inspired and I was like, this is it. This is who I'm supposed to be. And finally, I remember my parents saying, okay, like you've kind of proved it to us, like you can do it. And they signed me up for college on the first day of school.
Oh my
Um, and since then, I moved to New York City when I was 17, which is like super young. I can't even imagine like my baby's coming to New York City right now alone. But it was such like an experience, and I grew up fast, and it was great. And I interned my last year of college. I started out at a brand management and consulting firm, which really focused on the marketing piece and the sales piece. I stayed there. She took me on after my internship. And then I stayed on for probably about 2 years.
God.
And I felt like sales wasn't really my calling. I was missing that creative piece that was kind of always inside me. So I went into production for one of the designers at that firm. It was called the RJM Group. And production is not really fun either. There's like a lot of Excel spreadsheets and back end programs, but it was footwear, and I liked footwear. So at that point, I was like, let's go out there. You have to kind of like get out of your comfort zone, try something new. So I applied for a job at Jones Apparel Group under the Nine West division, and I don't know if you remember Nine West at all.
Yeah.
They were like the go-to pump for my college days. And
Totally.
I stayed there. I just grew with the company. I eventually left to have my child, but I was the senior product development manager there. And I learned so much about the product development cycle,
Yep.
from costing aspect, from design aspect, and everything in between. Confirming all the materials, and that's what I really loved. Is I loved the materials, the
Mm.
leathers, the colors, and the
Yeah.
Pantone. So then I left like actually right before they were bought out and they were private. And it was a good
Okay.
time to leave because I loved my core group of coworkers there, but everybody
Yeah.
kind of went their separate ways at that point. Um,
I mean, Nine West is such, like you mentioned, an iconic brand from growing up, I remember. Like the pumps, or even like they had great wedges that kind of look like the Jimmy Choo wedges, but obviously a lot less expensive. And even, was it Nine West that did the collab with Eric Damon, the costume designer from Gossip Girl?
It's possible. I'm not sure if it was my time there. It's very possible. They did have a lot of collabs going on there. So
Okay.
that
I was gonna say I think it is, and I went, they were doing an event at our Nordstrom here in King of Prussia Mall, and I'm pretty sure it was 9 West. I'll have to Google this, but if it is, like you said, I think they were kind of innovative for that time for doing collabs. Like, now collabs are so much part of our marketing mix, but I think they were kind of innovative in doing that early on and recognizing the benefits of that. So I'm sure you just learned so much during your time there.
Oh, yes, I really did, and it was like a good 5 years. I loved it there, and I missed it. So I left, I had my son, and I was really torn, like, do I go back to work? I feel like my career is just taking off, but I really wanted to be home with him. Like, I always had these dreams of being a mother, and, it was a hard choice, but I chose to stay home, and then, had my daughter 4 years later, and then I was definitely staying home at that point because now I have 2 kids.
Yeah.
Um, and then fast forward, like, it's been almost 10 years, and I'm kind of at the point where my kids are in school full time, and I was like, "Now is the time to go back." I'm gonna be approaching 40, which I don't wanna date myself, but it's like I almost had this, like, now or never, right? Like, I would and so I before I created Ivy Coast, I was looking around, and I was, like, trying to get back into the industry, but I'd have to start out a lot lower than I left, and it'd be a whole thing. There'd be a lot of hours and travel involved, and so literally at that time I was looking is when I was diagnosed with melanoma, and it was like, "Wow, okay, I can do this and be on my own time, be home with my kids, and then also create something, as a business."
Oh my gosh. Do you mind talking a little bit about that diagnosis of melanoma? I know May is, Skin Cancer Awareness Month that's coming up. And I think it's so important to, check yourself as a woman for all different types of cancers. So do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Sure. I actually was always proactive about getting skin checks. It was about
Yeah.
5 years of yearly skin checks before they even found the melanoma.
Wow.
Um, and so I was kind of surprised when she called me back. She biopsied stuff here and there, but when she called me back and she was like, "It's melanoma, but it's like in situ, which is like its earliest stages."
Okay.
So I was like, "Okay, good." But it was like a huge wake up call because, like, I mean, I did a lot of damage in my 20s. I'm not going to lie. We all laid out there with the baby oil and, the tanning beds and all of that. But it was a huge mindset shift for me.
Mhm.
The scar is, it's not just like some skin cancers, it's a very simple procedure where, and you don't even notice it. But the scar of melanoma, they have to go way beyond and deeper than, you know, what is there. So a
Yeah.
tiny little mole could leave you with a 4 to 5 inch scar. So it was on my back, and I'm glad I caught it early. But I always imagine now, like, what if it was on my face or my chest, where it's like
Yeah.
really visible? So now I'm constantly covered up, and that's the
Definitely.
scary
Or if it was a later stage, I mean, I'm a big Housewives, watcher, and so watching Teddy Mellencamp and everything that she's going through right now with, I think her brain cancer started with melanoma essentially, right? So I think it's just so important, and I loved how you turned this into a positive in a way to help others and kind of found a calling in it.
Yeah, and there's so many facts that people don't know. Like, melanoma doesn't always show up where you would expect it
Mm.
to, like where you got your sunburn. Like, I now have to get my eyes checked, and you check your nails, and you can get, inside your mouth. It could be, and that's, I think, what Teddy Mellencamp's situation is, that
Yeah,
it shows up in different spots that you wouldn't
yeah.
expect. So that's always kind of on my mind too. I get a little nervous about that.
Yeah. So that moment then, when I think you said your mother-in-law handed you a shirt and said to put this on, you're like, this is hideous. Like, that kind of was the jumping off point for deciding I'm going to go out there and create a brand that's better than what's offered right now, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's definitely a growing rate of skin cancers. It's growing among younger women, and if all the clothing and everything caters to older women, where is there? How does it fit the need of the market? So
Mhm.
it was like, I need to do something. Maybe I'm like, first move advantage here on providing something that's outside the norm.
Definitely. So tell me a little bit about then, going from this idea, that moment, being handed that shirt to getting the product out there. What did that look like? Like, you mentioned getting your sample and you loving that and finding the right material. Can you talk a little bit about your material? Because I felt it and it is so different. So tell a little bit about the importance of that and what that looks like and what it feels like to people.
Sure. So, like I said earlier, I spent 9 months trying to figure out because there's all kinds of chemical sprays you can add to clothing and synthetic materials. But I knew there were natural materials out there that are UV resistant, and bamboo happens to be one of them. So I kind of, used that as a starting point, and I sent out bamboo to test, and it was only like UPF 15, which is better than a t-shirt, but it's just not
Mhm.
high enough. So I was thinking, well, what if I like glued it or I did some kind of fabric combination to create my own fabric,
Mhm.
um, which came out too heavy because when you start throwing the glue. So I did all of this testing. And what I came out to is bamboo linings with, I call them shell fabrics. And
Okay.
essentially, it's like a synergistic formula. Is when you calculate the two together, you get that UPF value of 50 plus. So
Wow.
not all combinations work. So I've sent out so much stuff and I'm like, for sure this is gonna pass. It's super like tightly woven and it's this and it doesn't work out. So I kind of know the formula. It has to be like it has certain weight, a certain woven, tightly woven, colors, all affect everything.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. It's like you went, to school for chemistry now.
Clearly, right? Maybe that was my original path I should have chosen.
Totally. And I think the other thing besides that great feeling fabric that you have is also the prints. They're not very, sometimes I think with the sun protected fabric, it's very loud and, abstract. And I feel like yours are just so classic. So can you talk a little bit then also about the importance of your prints for the fabrics?
Sure. That kind of tied into play when I was thinking about the branding of Ivy Coast and who my
Mhm.
end consumer would be and what she was doing, where she was going. And I feel like always having that mindset as I'm designing is really key there. I am trendy, but not trend driven, if that
Mm,
makes sense. So
yeah.
I am not about like the newest like crop top. It's not my customer. I'm timeless, right? So I'm
Mhm.
trendy with my colors, maybe what's going on if they're pulling earthy, tones and whatnot. But my prints are exclusive to Ivy Coast, and I think I worked with my marketing team who helped me out with the branding, and I'll create this whole mood board of like what I'm trying to achieve and the story and then they come back with like a bunch of different options for prints and that's how I move forward with them, which I think is kind of special because there's many prints out there where you might buy a dress and then all of a sudden it's like done in a pillow and you
Yeah.
wouldn't know that unless you go into like these shows and they're just showing you all these fabrics unless you buy the license to the fabric they're able to sell it to somebody else and that could be expensive too, so having an in-house studio that I'm able to create my own prints is really helpful.
Amazing. And then, followed up by that, your silhouettes that you chose to have your pieces in. I also think those are so classic. They're feminine. They're preppy. Can you talk to us about that now?
Sure, and I think that ties into who the woman is, right? She's not too conservative, but she's classy. So there's
Hmm.
not like a lot of low cuts. I also try to keep in mind the sun protection because that's how Ivy Coast is originally founded. So if
Yeah.
I go out and I have all these tank top dresses and sleeveless dresses, it doesn't really protect you. So a lot of my dresses have long sleeves and high necklines, but they still look elegant. And
Hmm.
trying to kind of now develop new collections where people want a little bit more versatility. I've added like Swiss cuff details where you can roll up the sleeve
Oh,
should
smart.
you not want, a long sleeve. Or layering pieces. I have a lot of tops and like cover up like jackets and stuff
Mhm.
coming out. Just kind of give more versatility to the collection.
That's amazing. Okay, so we talked a little bit then about the products and the design with them. Now I'm curious more about that from idea to putting it out there to the world. What was your first steps in that? I'm assuming creating a website. Did you go to any shows? Were you active on social media? Like, what did that look like, getting your customers to find you?
I feel like I'm still challenged with that. Taking a brand and trying to grow it, it's going to be at least 5 years before you start seeing like a full circle effect. But I launched everything. I launched my website. I got started on my social media right away. I think the key is joining like where we met at Elevate and like joining those networking opportunities and meeting women and getting your brand out in person, being able to share your story is so much more effective than just social media and ads and whatnot. It's
Yeah.
really those connections. And then when someone falls and they fall in love with you and not just the brand,
Mhm.
and then they tell a friend, and then kind of the word spreads more quickly, I feel like.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. But in terms of marketing, I would say when I look at your Instagram, your imagery is so beautiful. Like I see, someone going to the country club and they're wearing your beautiful dresses, sitting out on the porch watching tennis, having a spiked lemonade. Like I think you did a really good job out of the gate with imagery and storytelling.
Thank you. That was part of my marketing team in the very beginning, and I think branding is such a big piece of who you are today. And growing and staying on brand is so
Mhm.
important. So those photo shoots are they're so time consuming in the nitty gritty and the scheduling. But every single piece, what tablecloth are you using? What drink is she drinking? What hat is she wearing? Where is the photo shoot?
Yep.
So much goes into that to give you that full picture.
Hmm.
But that's kind of in the nature of my personality. I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I love like attention to detail, and that goes into my home life. If anybody's been to one of my parties, like everything is great, on point, and detailed oriented. So of course, I'm going to take that into my business and my photo shoot, and I kind of felt like what I'm putting out there has to be tip top. It can't really be less than that.
Yeah. Well, the details are not lost on me. I recognize the amount of work and how beautiful those turned out. I'm curious, what is your favorite piece that you guys have right now? And then what's the best seller?
So my favorite piece is this sable dress. It's one of our originals, and we just keep continuing to build on it. I kind of hate anything that cuts me right across the stomach. I am more my most flattering point is like my rib cage, and so this dress is elastic waisted, and it hits you right at that point. And so if you're having a bad day, which we all have bad days, and we're not feeling great, this dress always makes you feel beautiful. So I love the sable. And I would say our best seller is this, it's the Bront, and it has
Okay.
this beautiful cotton linen blend fabric. It's just a go-to. It's a little different because it has a mandarin collar.
Mhm.
Beautiful, yeah. And the bottom is just very ruffled and fun. So it's flirty, but it's not short, so it doesn't
Mhm.
scream like too fun.
Mhm. Definitely. Um, no, those are all beautiful. I think they're just such classic preppy pieces. I'm curious, what is your favorite part about now having this business, being on your own? And then what's your least favorite part or like the hardest part of it?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll start with my favorite part. My favorite part is, and they are the most exhausting part, is attending these events and trunk
Mm.
shows and pop ups. It's exhausting, but I absolutely love connecting with women and inspiring others and meeting people who inspire me. And it's such a beautiful experience. So that would be my favorite part of the business.
Mhm.
My least favorite part, I would definitely say the back end is the business of the business, the accounting and all of those documents and things you have to be on top of.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a lot of time, and you don't realize like I want to be creative and I want to keep moving and prints and try this, sample that, but like you can't forget about that as well. So that's
Yeah.
kind of my least favorite.
No, that's across the board with everyone. Um, you know, who would be your dream customer? If you could have anyone wear one of your pieces, like who would you pick for that?
That's a hard one because I feel like you usually go to celebrities, but then, I don't personally know celebrities. So, like, you think you
Mhm.
know them, but then you don't. Um, I would say if I'm going with celebrity, I'm going to
Mhm.
go with Rachel McAdams from The Notebook because
Oh,
she's just like that Southern girl and she's so classy. So, she is not, I wouldn't go with her as a celebrity. I would go with her as a character. That to
yeah.
me is
Okay.
the ultimate ideal
Okay.
of character.
Yep. No, that's a great answer. I feel like, your brand to me portrays destinations and travel in a sense, just because I think they're great to, walk around outside, obviously, and stay protected, or like we said, sit on a patio enjoying a glass of wine. What's been one of the favorite places that you've ever been in, where somewhere that's on your bucket list?
Good question. I have a lot of travel to do because I had my children, and I feel like we haven't had the time to travel. But
Yeah.
before I had children, I would say Italy is my absolute favorite. It's just the people there are so warm and inviting, and you just feel so welcomed, and the country is so beautiful. So that would be my ultimate favorite. My
Mm.
husband and I really connect out there, and we love it. It's like a definite reset for us. Um, and my bucket list, I have to say this is odd, but it would be like traveling around the United States. I feel like there are so many cities that I have not traveled to that have so much history, and it's right here in our backyard. And I just don't get there enough because you're always focusing on like, oh, I want to go to Paris or I want to go to Italy or let's go, And so I think there's a lot to offer here that I just have to explore.
No, that's a totally good point. I feel like especially out west or Midwest, for some reason I don't get out there. I get, down south or to each of the coasts, but right in the middle, it's so beautiful. And that's definitely something, I want to try to get to as well.
And so different. Like each
Yeah,
parts of the states, like they all have they're just so you get so much out of it. Yeah, I know.
right? No, I hear you for sure. So obviously, we talked about New England Coastal Creative, the Elevate event, where we met. I'm curious, are there any other resources that you could share with listeners in terms of business? Whether it's a great book you read, another group you're part of, a newsletter or website that you look to constantly for inspiration or advice.
That's a good question. I feel like so from Elevate, I've kind of partnered with two other girls from Elevate, and we call ourselves the Dream Team. And
Mhm.
we meet weekly. And this would be my best advice is kind of collaborating with other women who are in the same situation as you. You're all starting the business, you have questions, the nitty-gritty, but we can go to each other and like kind of be very humble and like this is my challenge or this is my win. And I love that. So, recently one Allison, she's from Co-Fine Jewelry, she recommended a book called Profit First. And she's like, you must read it, you must read it. And I'm just like, oh, where do I have the time? I wish I had time to read, but I don't as much as I want to. But I listened to this book actually, it was Audible, and it was an amazing book because
Mhm.
it's all about taking like 5% of anything that comes in and putting it in a separate account where you can't touch. And it's
Mm,
more about for businesses. As you grow and you're making more money, you're spending more money, you're hiring and you're, putting more into your marketing budget. And then in the end, you're like not even breaking even. So when
yeah.
you take part of that profit and you just put it aside, you kind of budget yourself going forward. You're going to
Mm.
work off of what you have. And then essentially you're profitable. So I thought that was such a eye opening of a book. Running a business, you're always kind of figuring like, am I going to make profit? Do I have enough sales? And then knowing that, it's like a reassurance that you are.
Definitely. I've heard a lot of great things about that book. I'm pretty sure it's on my bookshelf actually, and I have to read
There
it
you go.
still.
It's a good
Uh,
read.
Yes, but I really love what you mentioned there is getting together with a group of like-minded women. I had Julianne Taylor Style on the podcast probably a year or two ago, and she mentioned having a think tank, which is very similar, like a group of women in different industries, maybe, or the same industries, where you can ask questions, you can celebrate each other, you can bounce ideas off of each other. So I think that's really smart and such a great thing. I need to find one locally here for me.
Yeah, no, it has been such a blessing, and we really help each other, and even just strategizing, like, we're gonna all be starting ads together and learning to run ads ourselves instead of outsourcing to an agency. But we were able to collaborate on this and get a better deal from the instructor, setting ourselves as a group. So there's a lot of things that you can use, together to kind of grow and, make it more scalable in regards to expenses and whatnot.
No, I think that's so smart. So I'm curious then, kind of going off of that, are there any other small businesses that you really love and maybe pair really nicely with your clothing that you want to give a shout out to that people can check out?
Definitely my 2 girls here. Allison from Co-Fine Jewelry, she has the most, and they're very much coastal vibe as well.
Mhm.
She has more fine jewelry, some beautiful gemstones and diamonds. And then there's another one, Nicole Zusi from Forlania. I love her as well,
Yeah.
and she's super sweet, and I just feel like you're gonna love them and not just the brand. You're gonna love the whole picture. So I have to give them a shout out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've met so many wonderful brands along the way, and each has like a different, unique idea behind them and a story. And I just love learning all the stories.
Yeah, that's the whole reason, I started the podcast is I love everyone's story and sharing those and being part of the entrepreneurial journey with them, and sharing that sort of advice and those learnings. I asked this question at a panel recently, a live panel that I did with Dillard's, and I really liked it because it made people think, and it almost made us think of something in a positive, or like giving ourselves kudos or a compliment, which sometimes is hard, especially as women. So I'm curious, so far, it's only, what month is it? April. It's not that far very into 2025, but what's something you're proud of that you've been able to do so far this year?
I am so proud that I have been able to launch into wholesale. It
Mhm.
kind of was on my list. My first year was spent direct to consumer, and I just had this dream like, I want to see my collection in stores and like walk in and be like, wow, to me, that's like you made it.
Yeah.
So I worked really hard because when I started Ivy Coast, it was more of a capsule collection. It was consisted of just dresses, and then there was maybe 9 styles involved. But when
Mhm.
you go into wholesale, you really need an assortment of a collection. So I worked really hard this past fall, and it came out, and it was beautiful, and it was exactly what I wanted. And I picked up new accounts. So I'm super proud that it was like kind of my phase two, and I pushed it a little faster than what I had originally planned. But it's happening. So I'm super excited for that.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge accomplishment and such a beast to take on. So, congratulations on that. That should be celebrated.
Thank you.
Now, I'm curious, any sneak peeks, anything you're working on that you can share with listeners?
Sure. Well, I can't really share who because it's still in talks, but I
Okay.
have a special exclusive collection that I'm hoping to partner with like a really great destination. And
Oh,
that would be an amazing opportunity if that actually comes to fruition.
excellent.
And my next steps, I'm really hoping to just grow. I think skin cancer prevention and UPF clothing, while it maybe a lot of people know about it here, it's huge in European markets. Like
Mhm.
Australia is pretty much all they wear, and Korea. And so I hope to like kind of dabble into that a little bit.
Okay.
I think I would have to create separate collections for each because the consumer, the fit, everything is a little different.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm hoping to come. I think that would be a next big step for me.
Yeah, take it internationally for sure. So, my final question is, let everyone know where they can find you, where they can shop your pieces, where they can follow along on social media, all of that.
Sure. Well, I have my website, www.ivycoastcollection.com. And you can shop my social media as well. It's at Ivy Coast Collection. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok. And follow along. I definitely encourage to subscribe to my website. If you go on there, you click the little pop up that everyone tries to ignore, but it'll get you into exclusive offers, some fun styling. And so, like, that's a great way to get involved and follow our story and kind of keep up, and great ways to shop.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, we have to go and do that now for sure. Well, thank you so much, Nicole. This was so great learning more about you and your business, and sharing it with all of my listeners today.
Thank you so much. Like I said, my very first podcast, and you have been such like a doll about this. So I appreciate it.
Oh, of course, you did great. Thank you so much for listening to the Preppy Podcast. I hope this put a little prep in your step for the day. Please subscribe, rate, and review on wherever you listen to your podcast, and follow along with @the Preppy Podcast on social media.